Morning. Morning. Thank you guys all so much for showing up to learn more about the importance of mentorship for foster youth and how to expand social capital for foster youth. My name is Brittany Bottles, and I will be starting today's presentation with a keynote. I would like to say before I start my speech, I've obtained permission from every person that is listed in my speech. When I Googled the term mentorship, according to the dictionary, it is defined as guidance provided by a mentor, especially an experienced person in a company or educational institution. It seems as if mentorship, metaphorically, is this neatly wrapped gift, a professional relationship that entails successful gains from the mentor to the mentee. However, this neatly wrapped box must look different for youth that have experienced foster care. I would like to touch on 3 levels of mentorship that has impacted my life for the greater good and has helped shape me into the advocate I am today. First, my experience with individual mentorship. Secondly, peer-to-peer mentorship. And finally, organizational mentorship. I was whipped away from my family at a young age. Because of the broken system, my family and I have not been together for over 6 years. After bouncing around from foster home to foster home, I was eventually placed into a group home, what I call Americans' modern-day orphanages. Because the group home barely fed me, I lost 10 pounds in a matter of a week and developed an eating disorder. This eating disorder ended up taking over my life. I began to lose hope of escaping my disorder after a dangerous amount of weight loss, as well as the group home refusing to accommodate my medical needs. They told me if my eating disorder persevered, they would kick me out and send me to another group home. But then I was introduced to who not only do I call my mentor, but my second mother. I met her through a mentorship program designed for at-risk girls. I really didn't want a mentor at first. I thought I could handle my life adversities on my own. But little did I realize that mentor, Miss Monica Hicks, would eventually become my shoulder to cry on, my safe haven, and my savior. Monica helped me survive trauma that no child should have to go through. To combat my eating disorder, she started my very first food journal, encouraged me to eat more and more every day, and eventually helped defeat my illness. Monica was trauma-informed, meaning she sought out evidence-based practices to assist me in defeating a mental illness I thought would haunt me for the rest of my life. Again, Monica is like a mother to me. When my own biological mother called me on my birthday, she called me to bond her out of jail rather than to wish me a happy birthday. Meanwhile, Monica came to my house to comfort me and to celebrate my birthday with me. Monica came to the group home to visit me when I had no one else to visit. She supported me in my trial as a victim of domestic violence, bought me new clothes because my clothes had holes in them, and she gave me rides to school when I didn't have one. She navigated me out of a toxic, abusive relationship and forced me to realize my self-worth. Finally, she saved my life by talking me out of suicide. When other adults stereotyped me and doubted me, she uplifted me and comforted me. Eventually, the organization she worked for asked her to terminate her relationship with me as her mentee-mentor contract was up. But because of the unique circumstances as a foster youth, always having adults I'm supposed to trust walk in and out of my life, and the special bond that we shared, we refused to let go of each other. 6 years later, she still comes to my birthday parties every year, listens to me when I need to talk about my trauma, and is the biggest support system in my life. She saved my life and kept me from falling into the dooming statistics that foster youth battle against every day. Thank you, Monica, for everything that you've done for me. The next type of mentorship I would like to discuss for foster youth is peer-to-peer mentorship. Serving as president of my youth board, I have the honor to engage youth in advocacy, as well as teach them life skills such as how to cook, how to navigate finances, and how to change a tire. Peer-to-peer mentorship is important for youth because of the level of empathy and trauma-inclusive support given from the mentor to the mentee. As a peer mentor, I have helped youth all over my county apply for scholarships, teach them their rights as foster youth, and provided life skills training that most foster youth unfortunately do not receive. Now let me speak about organizational mentorship and how that has influenced and strengthened my desire to transform the child welfare system. Because of foster care, my siblings and I have not been together in over 6 years. We have been separated by different systems, different homes, and different group homes. Going 6 years without my siblings has, out of all of my trial and tribulations, been the most traumatic experience of my life. I felt as if I didn't have a voice when it came to being with my siblings. Both Foster Club and CCII, two wonderful advocacy organizations for foster youth, helped me find that voice. They helped me navigate my sibling rights, strategically taught me how to advocate for my siblings, and helped me send countless emails to social workers, lawyers, and judges, particularly one person named Angel from Foster Club. Kate and Justin from CCAI recently helped me navigate a recent traumatic experience that happened with my brother and I, provided me emotional support, and has helped me pave the way to writing a policy report on sibling separation, which I will eventually present to Congress and the White House. Thank you, CCAI and Foster Club, for giving foster youth, including myself, practical support, as well as a platform for us to raise our voices. Angel, Kate, and Justin's mentorship has truly transformed my advocacy into a local and a national level. There's a few things that Monica, Angel, Kate, and Justin have in common. They are trauma-informed, they provide me with unconditional love and support, and I know in my heart these strong bonds will be everlasting. When it comes to mentorship for foster youth, we must not put a halt to the bond the mentee and the mentor establish, because it can lead to something greater. It can lead to a life-saving, future-changing, statistic-breaking, everlasting relationship that every youth in foster care deserves. Thank you. And now I would like to introduce Sadiq Ali, who is the Executive Director of Maryland Mentor, who will moderate today's panel.
Give her another hand, please. Before we get into this morning's heading into the afternoon's session, I just want us to just pause for a moment, and again, not just give Brittany another rousing round of applause, but also just take a moment to reflect. Some of the issues that we're going to be discussing today, they can't be solved through simply a clinical lens, right? These can't just simply be solved through logic and reason. Some of these issues, in my humble opinion, we have to feel them. Like, these have to be passion-based issues, and these are the type of issues that we have to allow emotion to inform some of the decisions that we make. We have quite a bit of housekeeping to sort of cover as we get into it today, but I don't want to let this moment pass without all of us really looking in the mirror. Just this past weekend, we celebrated the Eid holiday. So I had the opportunity to be with my siblings and my family. So I can only imagine what it is that you go through every single day, and again, millions of other foster youth are experiencing. And again, it gets me a little emotional just thinking about it. I don't know what I would do without my big brother, my little sister, my little brother. So I just want all of us to, again, just take this opportunity to pause and reflect on exactly what the implications are for many, many folks and many, many families, many, many young people around the country. Then we can kind of get into some of that discussion. So one more time, just round of applause. We also want to take this opportunity, again, just to welcome everybody. Good morning one more time. Good morning. All right. Let's get some energy going. We want to thank Representative Karen Bass from California and the co-chairs of the Congressional Foster Youth Caucus for hosting this event. Obviously, in our family, our team from Mentor National, aka the National Mentoring Partnership. Also, thanks to Senator Richard Blumenthal from Connecticut for your leadership and assistance and support in securing this space. And also, we thank you for focusing on issues that affect all young people, and again, as he continues to believe really in the power of mentoring as one of the components of critical support for the young people across the country. We also thank Foster Club for partnering with Mentor to host this briefing, and again, we thank all the number of organizations that are represented up here in the panel, including Best Kids, Youth Villages, the Fostering Change Network, Goldman Sachs, and again, my sister affiliate represented Mentor Nebraska for joining us this morning on this panel. So super excited to hear from all of them. And at Mentor, we work to provide the supports that young people need to thrive personally, professionally, and obviously in the workplace. And as many of you know, mentoring as part of a continuum of youth services is absolutely critical to what we know as youth development throughout the country. And again, we know that mentoring, along with some of the other supports that will be discussed today, are just absolutely, again, just critical and just super important in terms of creating that long-lasting effect and impact that we know that young people so desperately desire and so desperately need. So, and again, as we've just heard from Brittany so eloquently, relationships and the power of those relationships are, again, essential and core to not only, again, foster youth, but also alumni of care and young people who are at risk right now as we speak for entering the system. Because remember, there's a whole group of young people that aren't in the system but have serious risk of heading in that direction without our support. So today, really our goal for the panel is that we will hear from this dynamic ladies group. We had our conference call prepping. I was like, am I the only man on this call? I was, and I still am. So shout out to these dynamic ladies who are doing excellent work. And really our goal for this panel is for everyone in this room to really learn about and hear some of the innovative best practices that are being just really rolled out and implemented across the country by way of supporting foster youth, as well as experiences and strategies directly from the mouths of some of our direct service providers. And again, as we talk about just really the power of expanding social capital for all of the young people that, again, we love and support and hold near and dear to us. Lastly, we encourage everyone in the room, join in the conversation. I know those smartphones are burning holes in everyone's pockets, so we allow it. Just make sure you use our hashtag MentorIRL, which stands for Mentor in Real Life, because again, we believe in taking action in real life and not just keeping it philosophical and at the theoretical level. We need folks that are willing to get their hands dirty. So really, that's what that hashtag represents. Again, that's hashtag MentorIRL, aka in real life. And again, we'll be on Twitter throughout the next couple of moments. And now we would like to go ahead and take this opportunity to introduce our panel. I'm just going to say their names, but we're going to go right down the line here and allow, once again, these dynamic ladies to introduce themselves and really just give you an opening statement that sort of summarizes neatly some of their work and experience as it pertains to this really important topic. So we will begin, and I'll just introduce you all name-wise. Let me show. I have to pull out my notes, make sure I don't butcher any names. So to my far left, we have Whitney Baker, who's Director of Operations at Mentor Nebraska. We have Casey Getty, Policy Specialist. Yes, that's right. Nice wave. Policy Specialist with Foster Club. We have Kristen Glickman to my left, who's the Federal Policy Manager for Youth Villages. To the left of Casey, we have Shalita O'Neill, who's the founder and CEO of the Fostering Change Network. And lastly, we have, last but not least, we have Ms. Chrislyn Mossman, who's the Executive Director of Best Kids Incorporated. So I'll go ahead and pass it right to my left. Please just tell everybody about yourself.
Good morning. I love to see a packed room and that you were all here on time to hear Brittany. Thank you for sharing your powerful personal story, for inspiring all of us and really setting the tone today about the work that we all do, why we do it. I'm with Youth Villages, a nonprofit started in Tennessee many years ago, over 25 years ago, started to provide residential care. And then slowly but surely realized children do best in families. And so we moved to offer a continuum of services. Now we only offer residential in 3 states, but we have a presence in 16 states across the country, offering all sorts of services, including mentoring services, specialized crisis services, foster care adoption, in-home intensive services to keep children from entering the foster care system in the first place, help them reunify once they've been in care, or help them to reunify, make it a smoother transition if they've been in residential treatment to go back home. So that's a little bit about what we do. I have to also mention our services for older youth who are aging out of the foster care system, or maybe who are transitioning out of a mental health system or juvenile justice. We also serve that older youth group in a very special way, have evidence behind what we do, and is one of the largest programs and only in the country with research behind it showing positive impacts for that population of promising young people. So I do federal policy, and I'm here to answer your questions today.
Awesome, thank you so much.
Good morning, everyone. Again, my name is Casey Getty. I am the policy specialist for Foster Club, and I will also share that I am alumni of foster care from New Jersey. And at Foster Club, we are the national network for young people in and from foster care. We have young people between the ages of 18 and 24. And we focus in 4 different areas, which is training, our young leaders, outreach, and policy.
There we go. Hi, everybody. Hello, everybody. I'm Shalita O'Neill, the founder and CEO of Fostering Change Network Foundation. And I started the FCN Foundation to unite individuals who have foster care experience. We call like alumni. I'm an alum as well, proud alumni of foster care from Maryland, with the purpose of uniting us to empower us, but also to equip us to be able to excel in business. There's a stigma associated with being in the foster care system or from the foster care system, and what we want to do at the foundation is to show that we are a huge contribution to the world and that we can come together and work together to change things. So that's in a nutshell what the FCN Foundation is about.
Hi everybody, thanks for having us here today and for showing up and to hear more about the important work that we do. I'm Kristen Mossman. I've been the Executive Director of Best Kids for the past 5 years. We are a DC area-based nonprofit that provides one-on-one community-based mentoring for youth in foster care exclusively, ages 6 through 21, with the goal of really just making sure each child and youth in our program has at least one consistent and caring adult in their lives to help navigate all the transitions that they go through and to help them be successful and productive members of our society.
Good morning, everyone. I'm Whitney Baker with Mentor Nebraska. Mentor Nebraska is the Nebraska affiliate of Mentor, the National Mentoring Partnership. The mission of our organization is to increase the quality of mentoring programs across the state and increase the number of youth served by mentoring programs. And so we provide training, technical assistance, and a variety of supports to schools, nonprofit organizations, existing mentoring programs, individuals who want to start mentoring programs across the state of Nebraska to ensure that those programs effectively meet the needs of the youth that they serve and are structured in a way that aligns with national best practices for mentoring, are research informed, and we are, I'm proud to say, one of 30 affiliates of the National Mentoring Partnership. So there are 30 states that have organizations similar to ours, and I'm thrilled to be here today to learn from this really exceptional group of panelists and to also share what some of the research says about mentoring youth in foster care and how organizations like mine and the 30 affiliates across the country support entities that are supporting foster youth. Thank you.
Awesome. Give them a hand, give them a hand. And this is why Adrian asked me to moderate this panel. I'm like an expert at throwing audibles, so I want to throw an audible before we even get started, and that is to introduce an additional question, because again, as I opened up, I believe that this work has to become deeply personal for us all in order for it to have the impact that we need it to have, and as a couple of you have already shared, it's deeply personal to you all. So I just wanted to open up with that initial question for whoever wants to sort of lead off, and that is, really, what got you into this work? Because you all know, like we know, and many of the folks in this room, that just because you go through a particular experience doesn't mean that you're inclined to do anything about it. That's not a foregone conclusion by any stretch. So one of the things that I deeply believe about this work, particularly around youth development or really any of the tertiary supports and fields that are sort of tied in with it, is that we don't choose this work chooses us. So I just wanted to hear from each of you all, or again, whoever wanted to lead off, just in terms of what was that moment, what was that sort of personal story or experience that led you to do this sort of work? Because after just interacting with you all just a little bit in preparation for this panel, you all could be doing anything. What is it that called you to do this work?
So thank you, Sadiq. So I would definitely say that this work called me, because I tell people before I entered foster care, when I was living at home, I wanted to be a pastry chef, and that's what I was going to go to school for. I had the school picked out and everything, and at this point I was only like 13. But I had the school picked out. I was going to go to this nice restaurant school, and I was going to go to the internship at Disneyland, all the stuff. And then I entered foster care, and it was just like struck me. I was like, something is not right about this. The way I was being treated, the way my workers were, the way the foster parents were, everything. Like, and I just realized that I needed to have my own voice. And I needed to elevate that. And so I started to get into different things such as youth advisory boards and being a part of different councils. And as time went along, I'm like, okay, I want to do social work. This is what I want to do. I'm going to do social work. I'm going to change the foster care system. And as time went along some more, I was like, direct practice is not for me. So I decided to become I'm a management and policy social worker, and I realized that although change does happen at the bottom with direct service, it also happens at the top. And so that's why I chose to work at the top and create policy changes and help in that way, because the foster care system does need a lot of change and it does need a lot of work, and so I want to be able to help that so my foster brothers and sisters that come after me don't have to go through the things that I went through.
Wow, thank you.
I guess I'll chime in. So a lot like Casey, I wanted to be a forensic pathologist.
Wow.
So I loved crime scenes, and I wanted to determine who did what, probably because my mom was actually murdered when I was almost 3 years old. My father wasn't in the picture, and we've never found who murdered my mother. So I actually came into kinship and kinship care when I was 3, up until I was 13, where I officially went into the foster care system. And then I stayed until I aged out at 21, went 2 different foster homes, a group home before I went to college, because for me, I knew that was going to be my way out, even though I struggled through it. And excuse me, even through college, I was connected to great organizations. Like now it's called Foster Care to Success, and CCAI was also an organization I was connected to while I was in college. Even though I was connected, I didn't quite make the connection that I wanted to help or be a part of foster care or be an advocate in foster care. And I thought that maybe I was afraid that maybe my baggage from foster care might negatively influence other youth in care. I was scared. I didn't know how I was going to connect. I didn't know if I was going to be accepted or received well. So I actually went into retail for a number of years until I volunteered with an organization called Wellness Creation that helped me see they were working with young people around performing arts that were in foster care, and I made this instant connection. And I wanted to advocate for them because I didn't think what was happening with them was fair. And I knew, as far as when I was in foster care, I kept my head down, I did what I was supposed to do, and I got information that my peers did not get, that I did not think was fair. So initially, how I really was propelled into this work was because I wanted to prove everyone wrong. All the negative statistics, everything people tell me, you're not going to do much or be much or don't expect much from these young people. I was angry, and I used that anger to prove people wrong by starting my own organization. But now it has manifested into something much more bigger, and it is because I understand the value of social capital. I know it's about who you know and who knows you, and it's not always something that young people in foster care are privy to or told about. And so I feel, if we had a magic wand, it would be young people in foster care having that type of supportive network that when they need something, they could pick up the phone and call. When you need a job, a lot of people don't go on monster.com to get jobs. Most people know someone who knows someone. Sure. So that is what I want to create in this world, and I want to shift the narrative of the negative stigma. We are doing amazing things nationally and internationally, and that's why I'm here.
Wow, thank you so much. Wow. She even tried to run from it. Did y'all hear that? She tried to run from it, but the calling was too strong. I love it. I love it. Anyone else want to chime in?
I go a little bit. I don't have any personal experience with foster care. I grew up. My mother is a longtime special education teacher who was one of those teachers that became a mentor to many of her students. Many of her students who were in special ed just because of emotional trauma and disorders that they faced growing up. And so I got to see that firsthand, and just seeing the impact that she made me know that I wanted to work with youth in some shape or form. I was thinking social work, teaching, somewhere in between that. And my first job out of college was at a group home. For about the first 4 years of my career, I was one of those frontline staff. I like to think I was one of the good ones, but I definitely saw some that were not as good. And I saw a lot of the ways that trauma had impacted the youth. I got to see, well, not like it was a good thing, but I saw parents standing up their kids for visits all the time. I supervised visits where their parents would try to talk to me instead of their own children. I saw firsthand just a lot of the broken relationships, and it was really difficult. And a lot of times that was then taken out on me or the other kids in the home. But that job was definitely created a lasting impact for me, and kind of made the realization that I wanted to work with youth even more. I got into the mentoring field as, one, I was a soccer coach, and I kind of mentored through that. But I also became the executive director of Big Brothers Big Sisters in my hometown, which is on Maui in Hawaii. And that's where I got my first kind of formal mentoring background. And years later, fast forward, I'm here in DC, and I find a job that kind of combined both of those worlds together, and I'm mentoring and for foster care specifically. And I saw this job, and I was like, this is perfect for me. Thankfully, I was one of the few people that found a job on an online site without knowing anybody. It does happen, but it's rare. And it's just been such a blessing. These last 5 years have been amazing. I don't get to work hands-on with the kids very often, but when I do, it just always warms my heart to see the impacts that we're making, to see the resilience that they show. None of our relationships, mentoring relationships, are perfect. It takes a lot of hard work from our staff to maintain them, but it's been an awesome experience and kind of a pretty awesome career path for me.
That's awesome. Shout out to Crystal for being in DC instead of Hawaii. So we'll continue on. Thank you all so much. Thank you all so much. Those are really, really powerful stories. But again, hopefully you all will do more sharing in that regard. It's really, really powerful. So first formal question will be for Casey. So we've already heard this term thrown about a little bit, that's social capital. So we just learned you're an alum of foster care, et cetera. So we would ask you, what exactly does social capital mean to you? And what role can it play in expanding career, academic, and enrichment opportunities for young people in foster care?
So we've heard that social capital is the building of relationships, and it also helps with healthy, long-lasting development for young people in care. And so really what it means to me is that being able to have a chance, because young people in foster care are already put at a disadvantage. The cards are stacked against us. If you look at the statistics, there are so many against us. We're destined not to succeed. And so being able to have social capital, it gives us that advantage. It gives us the chance to succeed. And being able to have a bond with someone who can give us that job, or give us being able to pick up that phone and talk to someone, and just being able to have someone by your side, because a lot of the times we are alone, and a lot of the times we have people coming in and out of our lives, so many different people, and you think somebody is going to last a long time, and they wound up leaving in like 6 months. And so being able to have someone that is in it for the long haul is really something special, and something that we cherish, and something that we want.
That's awesome. Thank you so much. Whitney, what factors would you say influence the effectiveness of mentoring for youth in foster care, and/or what special considerations should we be thinking about as it pertains to mentoring young people in foster care?
Absolutely. So I will say that in regards to supporting youth in foster care with mentoring, there's still work that needs to be done in the research arena, but there are a few things that we can glean based on existing studies from the youth characteristics perspective, from the mentor characteristics perspective, and also the mentoring program characteristics. So first of all, with youth, there is some research to support that ethnic minority youth who are matched with a mentor of their own race are more likely to benefit from mentoring than even white youth. There are studies that have looked into age as it relates to mentoring in youth in foster care, and there have really been no huge differences found in regards to the age of youth. We've also found a little bit of mixed research in regards to the maltreatment history of young people, and some studies have shown that youth can benefit equally from mentoring regardless of their maltreatment history. There's another study that shows that, and it's not specific to mentoring, but it's more specific to social support, that youth with fewer depressive symptoms are more likely to benefit from social youth to benefit from mentoring. Another thing to consider is the program characteristics, and this is really a huge reason why organizations like Mentor Nebraska and the mentor affiliates across the country exist, to support mentoring programs and being able to effectively deliver services. Because it does matter who youth are paired with, the commitment level of the mentors, the knowledge base that those mentors have, and so programs need to effectively screen mentors to ensure that they're committed, and that when the relationship hits rough patches, that they're not just going to hit the road and bail on a young person who, quite frankly, has already had a lot of adults in their life who've let them down. And why mentoring programs need to provide effective ongoing monitoring and support of mentors and mentees who have foster care experience, because again, those youth have jaded relationships with adults, and we totally understand why, and mentors need to be supported in continuing to build those connections with young people, and have someone that if they do hit a rough patch with the relationship, that they can call and say, this is what I'm going through, I'm not sure how to handle this, can you provide me some support? So that really is, why mentoring programs exist, why we support the structured environment of these types of relationships. And we'll speak a little bit more to how we, I think, support these programs specifically in regards to these relationships in a few minutes.
Awesome, thank you, thank you. Kristlyn, Miss Hawaii, I'm not letting that go. Can you tell us a little bit more about how Best Kids in particular is supporting youth in foster care, and the special things you all are doing?
Yeah, so we've been around for the last about just over 15 years providing one-on-one mentoring. We started with about 10 mentoring matches, is what we call them, back in 2005, and we've grown to serve over 150 a year now. A lot of that growth has been very recent. We ask mentors to spend 10 hours a month at least with their mentee, kind of based on their own schedule in the community. However they want to spend that time together, they hopefully will both have a say in what they want, how they want to spend their time together. But it's really about just, there are clinical mentoring programs, there are kind of more legal, like advocacy mentoring programs. Ours is really just about spending that quality time, building that relationship that allows kids to be kids, allows kids to kind of see a world beyond their own individual communities and the possibilities that are out there. We've had mentors where every outing they did, the mentor made it a point to bring in one of the employees and talk about, just get to know them, to talk about their career path, whether it be they go to Six Flags, it's talking about to one of their employees, like, okay, so here's what's out there, here's the possibilities, or going to a Nationals game, okay, there's a lot of careers behind the scenes in sports that aren't just being a professional athlete. So we've had mentors really kind of just help open up and expand the worldview for youth in our program. We start as young as 6 years old, all the way through, actually, we say 21, but we really do have some 22-year-olds still in our program, because their relationships are still growing strong, and the support we're providing them is still beneficial to them. We have, as Whitney was saying, that supervision and support is really important, because there are a lot of challenges, and especially with foster youth, there's a lot of transitions, a lot of placement disruptions. They move all the time, move schools all the time. There's a lot of times where the mentor will go pick up their youth, and the caregiver there will be like, oh, he doesn't live here anymore. He moved out last week. And so now we have to our staff is there to help troubleshoot and locate where the youth went, kind of manage that transition to a new home, provide some extra support. There's a lot of coaching and motivational effort that our staff makes so that the youth have that long-term person in their lives. We ask up front that mentors commit to at least a year, but we really push a lot longer than a year, because we know that more positive outcomes can come throughout that. Our very first mentee in the program has been matched with his mentor for over 9 years now, which is pretty awesome. They've been through a lot of challenges together. By no means has it ever been perfect, or is it perfect today, but they have each other, and it's a pretty awesome thing to see.
That's amazing. And I was just struck by something that you said just a second ago, and that is, one of the core functions that the mentors in your program serve and support our young people in, and that's just allowing them to be kids. Just allowing them the opportunity to just go and have fun, because again, so many of our young people in a variety of settings are just, we age them so quickly, and a lot of times this is something that's like really missing. So I appreciated hearing that. Kristen, my neighbor here, can you tell us about how youth villages, direct service work, and some of the federal policy, you guys' federal policy agenda helps to strengthen families and create those support systems for young people that we've been speaking about?
The easier answer is, on the federal side, I try to defend and protect funding that's crucial to majority low-income children, youth, and families, and then advanced policies that help serve those children, youth, and families, right? So that can be a variety of ways. But the more interesting and more difficult thing to talk about, I think, is how we deliver direct services to those vulnerable children and those vulnerable families. Those family units look very different, and because of all the services that we provide, I talked about on the continuum of care, it all looks a little bit different. But something that Chrislyn mentioned is what I didn't know about coming from the service provider's perspective, seeing Youth Villages mentoring programs, is that you have to have staff to do all those things that you're talking about doing mentoring well. It's whether it's a formal or informal thing, really the importance of having that continuity at the staff level, that like a funded position in an organization or wherever it happens to be able to be the resource to the mentor, to recruit mentors, all of those things to get the programs going. So we have informally been doing that for about 20 years, but we did start, mentoring about 25 years ago. But it's just evolved and become a much better, more sophisticated operation. But we can't offer it right now in every one of those states I mentioned, so we don't have mentoring in those 16 states. It's only a few, depending on what programs we have in that state, because you have to have staff to do those important functions. So I guess I didn't realize that before I came into the work. From the provider perspective, yes, it is essential to have at least one person to do all of those things.
I think it's even more important, and again, Kristen sort of alluded to it as well, like so many times we think that the young people in the program are the only ones that require support and motivation, but she will tell you a lot of time is being spent just like talking mentors off the ledge and keeping them engaged, and that is someone's full-time work. It has to be, in terms of that match support, that ongoing training for the mentors, etc. And just FYI, one of the things that Mentor sort of drives, along with the affiliates, so myself and Whitney and the rest of our sister affiliate network, we really drive the practice and the implementation of what's really known as the gold standard in terms of best practices for mentoring programs. We call those the elements of effective practice for mentoring, aka the EEP for short, which are 6 standards that are currently now in their 4th edition. So they've been around for a little bit, and sort of continue to evolve as emerging research sort of comes into our forefront in terms of what are some of the best practices in terms of program models, etc. These 6 best practices for mentoring programs can really be adapted to various types of programs. So we've already referred to a couple of those elements, aka again best practices, since we've been up here already, starting with screening, or really starting with recruiting of mentors and mentees, screening both the mentors and the mentees, because again, a lot of times we think that screening is just for mentors, but no, we screen mentees as well, along with training, match support and initiating, missing up one, closure,
recruitment, training, screening, matching, and initiation, monitoring and support, and closure.
Good job, good job.
I've done this a few
She rescued me. Those 6 best practices can be found at the Mentor National website, mentoring.org. And I would encourage everyone in this room to sort of just download a copy of those and just familiarize yourself with, when we talk about quality standards for programs, this is what, in part, we're referring to, just FYI. Shalita, can you discuss with the audience how the Fostering Change Network, how you all's model supports empowering foster care alumni to start their own businesses, expand relationships and create networks of support that serve their professional development?
Definitely. So I started the Fostering Change Network about 6 years ago, and it is more of a peer-to-peer model amongst people who've been in the foster care system. And I like to define what I mean by that, because we call ourselves alumni, but it's not just if you've been in the foster care system, it's if you've been adopted out of foster care, it's if you lived in foster care for a year and went back home, it's if you live with anybody other than your biological parents as a child for whatever reason, we consider you an alum and part of the family. And it was, I've done a lot of direct service work, providing like housing, emergency services and things like that. And I felt like it was time to take a different approach because of how powerful the peer-to-peer supports and mentoring and coaching. I've seen the impact that it has. And I also wanted people to know that we aren't just foster care. And that's coming from a social worker. Right? I have an MSW. But we are also business owners, we're entrepreneurs, we're legislators, we're authors, we do so many different things at so many different levels, and sometimes we do gravitate towards human services and child welfare because we feel a sense of needing to give back, but we are multifaceted, we have so many other talents. And one of my mentors, Steve Beyond the Willow, tells me every time I have this great nonprofit idea, and I'll go to him and he'll say, we need more, and he's an alum himself, he's a millionaire. He said, we need more alum millionaires, you know, because that's when you have the funding to be able to pool your resources and create opportunities that aren't currently there. That's when you create change. So my focus around the Fostering Change Network Foundation is just that. One of the ways that we've started doing this is through the Alumni Powerhouse Networking Conferences, and a couple of alum here have come to the last one we just had. Yay!
Nice.
Okay. And I actually, I had some leftover programs, so some of you may have them in your folder. We started that in 2015 with the purpose of bringing alum together from across the country to learn from each other, how to start a nonprofit, how do you start a for-profit, how do you deal with your personal foster care history in a way that doesn't hinder you professionally. This year we just had it June 9th and 10th. It seems like it was so long ago, it just happened. But we opened it up internationally. So we had an international, global conversation about what does foster care look like around the world, because it's not just a US issue, and some of the issues that we do have, we share. And so how can we create an alumni network that expands across the world? And so from the AP&Cs, this was our 5th one that we did. The feedback was, okay, well, this is great. It's a great opportunity for healing. Never been in a space where I don't have to explain myself. I come through the door, we're family, and we're talking about business. But what about year round? You know, I need additional support. So one of the things that we are about to do is launch a Global Ambassadors Program. And it's going to be a 12-month fellowship for alum who are have been trying to get an idea off the ground, who have an innovation that they feel ultimately may improve the child welfare system. That could be them developing an app or a resource or a product or a service or a program or a nonprofit that ultimately may give back in some way. We match them with an alumni coach. We give them information to help them refine their idea, and match them up with a corporation that will end up giving them seed dollars at the end of the fellowship to help them, and also re-engage them around continuing to be a part of the network and paying it forward. So that's something that we're about to launch as a result of the feedback from the AP&Cs over the last 4 years. So we're looking for partners around that.
Wink, hint, hint.
Yeah. So we're also looking to launch a membership program where those who are not in the Global Ambassadors Program have year-round access to webinars. They can also have access to alumni coaches, virtual coaches. We already have a powerhouse conversations that we do. We interview alum once a month, having free access to the AP&Cs and other local networking events, just to continue the resources, because not everybody needs the same level of support. So in a nutshell, what we're trying to do, and what we are doing, is helping to expand the horizons of people from the foster care system to see that they can achieve whatever it is that they want, but making sure that they get the resources they need to build capacity so that they can first also be financially not just sustainable or sustained, but thriving, because that's, you see the millionaires start the business and they sell the business and they have all these millions of dollars, and then they start a foundation, and then they don't have to worry about writing grants all the time, and they can just create their own foundation and give back. That's a strategy, and we need to be able to do that as well.
I love it. That's awesome. Thank you so much. Whitney, we'll come back to Whitney. How does Mentors Affiliate Network train and prepare programs to support these young people? And what are some of those key mentoring best practices that make these models work so well?
Absolutely. So we're fortunate to have received OJJDP funding to the National Mentoring Partnership to create a National Mentoring Resource Center that deploys no cost, and that's huge, no cost, training and technical assistance to mentoring programs, schools, nonprofit organizations across the country. And so we are a technical assistance provider in Nebraska and have actually provided some technical assistance outside of Nebraska where an affiliate doesn't exist as well. But this is to ensure that cost is never a barrier in individuals or programs seeking that technical assistance that they need to make or to create an effective program. So some of the best practices, and Sadiq already mentioned this, are around the recruitment, screening, matching, monitoring and support, and closure of mentoring matches. And so of course, one of the most important factors is making sure that your mentors are committed, that they understand that there is usually a time commitment that's associated with the mentoring relationship, that if the relationship is terminated prior to that, 1 year mark or 2 year mark, that there can actually be more damage done to a young person than if they had never had a mentor at all. And again, when we're taking into consideration that these young people in care have often been let down by a lot of adults in their lives, it's even more important to reinforce the commitment to the mentors as they're coming into the programs. Another piece is screening. Of course, safety is one of the most important factors in any program. And Sadiq mentioned the screening of mentees, and I just wanted to clarify because he didn't mean that we're putting mentees through background checks, but that we're trying to better understand a mentee's background and their experiences so that we can find the best mentor for them, and that they also understand, and this is particularly important for older youth, what the time commitment is and sort of what they bring to the relationship, and that this isn't just a transfer of sort of experience and knowledge from one wiser, older person to a younger, inexperienced person, but really a two-way relationship where both parties need to participate and be committed. And then of course, matching, making sure that we're pairing the right mentor with the right youth, and so that relationship is often based on shared interests, shared experiences. I've heard staff in programs say that matching mentor and mentees is an art, not a science, and so just seeing those personalities and knowing who's going to be a good fit. Monitoring and support, which is huge, really allowing for that relationship to flourish, but under the care and support of a structured program where the mentor has an outlet if they run into a barrier that they don't know how to handle. The young person has an outlet in that staff person, again, to troubleshoot challenges from their perspective. Again, the monitoring and support piece is huge in the maintenance of ongoing safety and making sure that the relationship milestones are being met. And then once matches do come to a natural closure, or sometimes a closure that was unanticipated, that's handled in sort of the most respectful and meaningful way, because we want young people to look back on the relationships that they've had with these adults as a celebration, as an accomplishment. We want mentors and mentees to make arrangements for how they will communicate, if they will communicate, after the structured program is no longer involved, and what that might look like. And so there's just so many considerations that programs need to make in serving any youth, but in particular with youth in care, really making sure that they're crossing all their T's and dotting their I's, so that, again, that youth is surrounded by a supportive environment, that mentor understands trauma-informed care. So again, youth in care have experienced a lot of trauma. Mentors need to know what that looks like, how to respond appropriately, and support that youth over the long term.
That's awesome. That's awesome. Casey, we haven't heard from you a little bit. So last year, the National Foster Care Youth and Alumni Policy Council wrote a set of policy recommendations on how to improve social capital for foster youth. You're getting all the social capital questions. Can you discuss some of those policy recommendations and how they might be translated into federal or local policy?
Yes. So we focused on 4 different areas. I actually, when I was on the council, I was in this work group and helped create this set of policy recommendations. So the first thing that we put in our recommendations is recognizing the importance of preserving healthy family ties. And so some of the young people on the council were discussing how they may have been separated from their siblings, and a sibling may have aged out of care. However, that relationship was not continued on by their worker. Like, they didn't continue to connect them with that person, and that relationship was no longer, like, it was very hard to continue to have. And there was also times where if a young person might have been wanting to be placed with a relative that, you know, the worker may have not have seen fit for the young person to be with them. However, they still wanted to keep in contact with that relative. And so that's one of the things that we put as an importance, is that continuing these healthy ties, is that although we are placed into foster care, these people are still our family. Like, they're still family to us, and we still want to have a relationship with them. And so having that relationship really helps with not feeling alone in care, and just not even having to worry. Like, I worried a lot about my siblings because we were all separated, and I really honestly never lived with them, any of them again. And so it just really put a strain on our family relationship, because it's like I didn't live with my siblings for 7 years. And so trying to build a relationship with them throughout that time was very difficult, especially with all of us being in different ages and different placements in different parts of the state. And so that's something that was not fostered, and that connection was not there. And so that was one of the things. And also a big thing that has been brought up as well is care in this one set, is that caregivers being in communication with birth parents, and that's something that we are seeing now more and more, but I would like, and a lot of us would like to continue to see that, because in the past it was like this foreign thing that foster parents talk to the birth parents. However, now it's becoming more of a trend, and so we would like to continue to see that happen. The second thing that we added into our recommendations is the nourish of school-based relationships. A lot of the times, school is a safe haven for young people in foster care. That is the place that they enjoy going, because whatever situation is going on in the group home or the foster home, it may not be a great situation, so going to school is like their outlet. However, statistics show that only 50% of young people from foster care graduate with their high school diploma, and only less than 3% of us graduate with our college degree. And so being able to have these school-based relationships, and the guidance counselors knowing about foster care, teachers knowing about foster care, and being trauma informed is a great way to nourish those school-based relationships, because there were many teachers that did not know that I was in foster care, and the guidance counselors had no idea what was going on, or why I was acting out in school, and why my grades were slipping, and it's because I was moving from home to home. And students would ask, like, why were you missing for 2 weeks? And I would have to explain to them, like, oh, I was in another placement for a little while. And also, a third thing that we put in our recommendations was to create opportunities for foster youth to have access to mentors. A lot of the times we are matched with mentors, however, the mentor may not be a good fit. However, being able, if we see someone that could be a great mentor to us that may not fit in the category of whatever our caseworker might see, being able to allow them to be our mentor, and then also allowing that relationship to flourish. We feel like that is something that is important to us, so we can succeed. And then lastly, involving youth in community-based and culturally inclusive services and activities. As we all know, it takes a village to raise a child, and in foster care, it takes a lot of people, more than normal. However, making sure that youth are connected to the communities that they live in and identify with. We've had young people that are Spanish-speaking being taken out of their homes and then put in a non-Spanish-speaking home. And so having to learn another language that is not theirs is unfair unfair to them, and they should be able to continue with the culture that they know and lived in. And so that was one of the important things, and also allowing young people to be engaged in normal activities, after school activities. If a young person wants to join a basketball league, it shouldn't be all of these things like we have to do background checks and all this other stuff of the basketball coach to make sure it's okay. And the foster parents being okay, and also the caseworker providing the funding or support, or the state providing the funding or support for young people to be involved in those different activities, because at the end of the day, yes, being a part of a football team or a cheerleading squad, it costs money. And however, if that's something that a young person wants to do, they should be allowed to do that, because in any normal life, they would be. So those were the things that we discussed.
That's all. I continue to be astounded at some of the statistics. Wow. Whitney, I wanted to turn it back over to you really quickly. One of the points that Casey spoke about was really, again, about encouraging young people to sort of engage with their mentors proactively. So I wanted you to speak a little bit about some of the work that Mentor Nebraska has been doing around some of the research and sort of leading the charge on the implementation of youth-initiated mentoring, which is actually a thing. So please.
My favorite topic. How much time do we have? Yeah, so I'm loving what I'm hearing from my fellow panelists, and it's reinforcing that what I'm hearing in Nebraska are some of the same things. And so one of the ways that youth can be encouraged to develop social capital is through a model of mentoring called youth-initiated mentoring. And it is just what it sounds like. It's going to a young person and saying to them, who is it that you connect with? Who is it that you look up to? Who do you want to build a stronger connection with? And then creating some structure to let that youth explore building that relationship with some support from an existing mentoring program. And what we found are that there is some research out around this model and our specific implementation, but what we found is that youth really like having a say in who their mentor is. Shocking, right? And especially older youth, because I think when you come to, again, a youth in care who's 17 or 18, and I've said it 19 times today, but who have been let down by nearly every adult in their life, they don't want just some stranger to come in, but many of them have, along their journey, encountered those caring people that they would like to reconnect with. And relationships are an art, but we like to also say that there's a science behind relationships, and that building relationships between young people and adults is a skill that we have to teach. It's not just something that if you don't know how to do it, you're out of luck, but it's something that we need to continue to facilitate with these young people. We really believe that permanency for youth in care is through relationships, and eventually those caring, caseworkers and social workers and teachers are wonderful, but they will eventually, go away once the youth graduate high school, once they, graduate college, move on into their own independence, and they need to have people that they can call and say, I have nowhere to go for Thanksgiving, or I have a job interview and nothing to wear. I need help on setting up these doctor's appointments. And we need youth to know it's okay to ask for help, and that, it's sort of a really well-kept secret that we all use our relationships to get where we need in life. And it's, to be quite honest, ridiculous that we don't teach young people this skill earlier in life so that they can benefit from it. So youth-initiated mentoring has really been sort of the path that we've used to be able to begin creating those relationships, begin talking about social capital. We're working with youth who have aged out in Nebraska right now, creating a particular curriculum with some foster care alumni that's just around social capital and social resourcefulness. So I might be hitting up some of my panelists after this presentation. But there are just so many ways that we can teach this skill while youth are still in care, and lots of avenues to do that. And again, permanency is about relationships. So whatever we can do to build those natural relationships, we'll do.
That's amazing. I'm game too. I'm game. We have a conversation already scheduled. So Kristen, in February, everybody's always off guard when I call them. Like, who's he going to call next? It's like sheer panic up here. No, they're doing great. So Kristen, in February, Congress passed the Family First Prevention Services Act, which is a law that changes the structure of federal child welfare finance, providing more federal resources towards prevention services, okay? Can you talk about what some of the opportunities the Family First Act opens up for organizations and individuals that support work on expanding those relationships and, again, support and increasing social capital for young people in foster care?
Sure.
It's a long question.
Just to get an idea, who in the room has heard of Family First?
Awesome.
That is wonderful. So it was after years of advocacy, both youth-led, child advocate-led, and then by the leadership of certain key members, Senators Hatch and Wyden, and then on the House side, Brady, Levin, Buchanan, Neal, and then of course leadership, all came together to really move it forward over the final finish line in February as part of the Bipartisan Budget Act. So Family First, just broadly, I think, to give you a sense, will allow states to enhance their prevention resources to prevent more children from entering foster care on the front end, and then reduce inappropriate placements. So when there are placements that are not right for that child, there's more accountability built in. So there will be less of a federal funding, less of an incentive to fund those at the federal level. But Youth Village is one of the few service providers who offers residential as well as other services who endorse the legislation. We have been supporting it, from the early days and are really excited about the potential that it has to keep families intact across the country with those prevention services, and then help them if they are transitioning out of things like group homes and residential to be back in their community and back with their families. So if folks are not aware, the groups that are eligible to receive services include children who are at imminent risk of entering foster care, but for the receipt of these services, they can stay in the home safely. Their parents and kin caregivers for the first time. This is monumental for child welfare legislation. And by the way, major child welfare legislation does not pass but every decade or 20 years. I mean, it's a big deal that Family First actually passed. So that's the second group that is eligible to receive services. And then the third group is pregnant and parenting foster youth. So those are a lot of the youth that we see through our older youth, transition age youth program. I mentioned YV LifeSet. They're at a particularly high risk for their children entering foster care later. And so they're categorically eligible for these prevention services. The services for the first time will include mental health, substance abuse, treatment and services, and things like in-home family counseling, and in-home services. So it's really a terrific opportunity to, I think, build social capital in communities, not only because we're going to keep more children, hopefully, from entering the system, making sure that state foster care is the last resort, truly. But also by encouraging and incentivizing through financial incentives from the federal government, more organizations to step up and meet the evidence standards so that they can qualify for funding.
Well, that's huge. That's huge. I think especially, again, so much of our time and attention, I think, often is spent on serving the young people that are already a part of the system. But it's equally as important, I think we've heard from this conversation, that we need to be focusing on preventing more young people from entering into the system, so that way it just doesn't become a revolving door.
Yeah.
I
also want to mention that eligibility will be for re-entering, so you can prevent youth from re-entering foster care, which we heard, can happen multiple times throughout someone's life. So that's a really important thing to note. And then it can also help if there has been adoption and there's been a dissolution of that relationship. They are also then deemed at risk, imminent risk of entering foster care, so they can receive services too. That's just a general sense because it's a huge piece of legislation, but if you've got specific questions, I can try to answer them afterward as well.
That's awesome. Thank you so much. Chris Lynn, you're up. So we heard a little bit from Whitney just in terms of some of the special considerations that programs to sort of keep in mind when, again, either matching or screening or recruiting mentors or mentees specifically that have been involved in the foster care system. So we want to hear from a program standpoint, what are some of the things that Best Kids sort of does in that regard in terms of, again, special considerations for foster care youth?
Yeah. So from the very beginning, we make it very clear the importance of the commitment, the long-term commitment, that it often can do a lot more damage for those broken relationships for the youth in care than with any other youth.
I want to dig into that a little bit, right? Because we've heard that now a couple times. Maybe give us an example of, like, how does that conversation go? Like, what is the response? Like, what is your staff? How does your staff go about conducting that conversation? Because that's really like a huge point of what we're talking about, to not do further damage or, right? What does that look like?
Well, part of what we do is we do an in-person interview. We do, a number of reference checks and all those types of things. But part of that interview is really figuring out kind of what the motivation for mentoring is, why they want to be a mentor, make sure they're in it for the right reasons, that they're not in it to be a savior and not in it to for any personal, only personal gain. Mentors do gain a lot from mentoring. I don't want to dismiss that, but it's really just exploring kind of what their plans are for the future. I mean, the biggest reasons that mentoring relationships close are because of mentors' life changes. And in DC area, it's very difficult. It's a very transient area. We have administrations coming and going, and people traveling a lot for their careers is a real issue for us. And so it's really just getting, and we're not perfect at it. We still have matches close prematurely, unfortunately, but we really just try to get mentors to be honest about their situations. Be like, how often do you travel? Do you plan on having kids? It's kind of difficult questions to ask and difficult questions for mentors to answer, but really getting them to at least think inwardly, maybe I'm not willing to vocalize and say that I'm planning to have a child in three years or 2 years that might impact this relationship, or maybe my job, I'm not traveling yet, but I down the road think I might be traveling 5 months out of the year. And really get them to be honest inwardly. And a lot of times they maybe won't vocalize it in their interview, but they'll kind of bow out naturally, and we kind of create the opportunity to do that, because we ultimately don't want that relationship to be broken. We rather them end it before they even start. So that interview is really, really important for us. And then through training, we have an initial training that all mentors go through, where they learn more about the foster care system, more about an overview of trauma and how it impacts not only behavior, but the ability to build relationships and what that looks like, what to expect as being a mentor, kind of what the roles are. And then we utilize an online training that mentors can use and do it at their own pace, called Mentoring Essential, which is a research-based mentoring training platform that's gaining some publicity and traction with mentoring programs across the country now. And then beyond that, we do monthly ongoing training sessions that really cover topics that we see as common kind of challenges or issues that mentors and mentees face. This month we had one on LGBTQ issues and how to support their mentees, not only mentees who are identify as LGBTQ, but just mentees that have questions about it and how to talk to their mentees about those issues. We have trainings on how to play a role in their mentees' education. Not necessarily that they have to go out and be an advocate, but how they can support learning and the love for learning in their relationships. So as these issues come up, we really try to provide training to mentors focused on our specific population.
No, that's amazing. Thank you. Yeah, and I think it's important for us to deep dive in as many of these topics as possible, because again, we throw around terms very, very often, but I think that was a really, really good just overview of what one of those conversations looks like. We've heard it before, like in the direct service side of the business, like essentially during those interviews, those screening interviews, you want to scare the prospective mentor. You want to tell them like the worst of what could happen, so that way they can sort of self-select to a certain regard and not, again, have a broken or premature closure. So I think that's really, really important. Shalita, we're heading towards conclusion here in a little bit. We have time for a couple more questions before we turn it over to Q&A and some of our special guests in the room. But Shalita, we know that there are many different types of relationships that young people in foster care can benefit from. Can you speak to some of those informal, or as we call natural mentoring relationships that occur and how they can play a role in supporting young people?
Sure. So I know one of the things that we could do a little bit better job of is incorporating technology, using technology to connect with young people, because we need to go where they are. Right? So some of the, there's the one-on-one or the high touch sort of mentoring, but they're on social media, they're on Facebook, they're on Instagram, they're on Snapchat. And for a lot of agencies, they may not have policies or things in place to be able to tap into those types of resources, but I would encourage that because one, that's where they are. I know there was one Facebook group that my group created called Alum Connect, and we had young people who were transitioning out of foster care. We hand-selected alum who had already done so to be in the group to provide inspiration or to answer any questions that they may have. And it was on a small scale, but again, it's using social media where they are to reach them and to build up relationships with them. I'd also say too, there's a very strategic way of mentorship, but a lot of people can relate to the fact that you may have been walking down the street in a crossing guard or something like that, may have said a few good words to you or kind words to you that stuck with you for the rest of your life. A lot of times people feel like mentorship has to be a certain amount of time, but it could just be the words that you say to someone that impacts the rest of their life. And so I'd encourage not to shy away from those types of opportunities, because sometimes, our young people, it's a different generation, and some people may be afraid to approach them, especially we're talking about our young people in foster care, but they really do want someone that's brave enough, that's going to step out of their comfort zone to share a word of kindness or share some advice, because those things also stick with them. I'd also say giving alum opportunities, just integrating it in every single thing that you do, to be able to come back and be mentors or coaches, and training the young people that are transitioning now, that have an interest in it, to be trainers, so that they can come back. We actually developed a curriculum that was created by alum from foster care that has inspirational quotes in it, but also has some life skills, and the purpose is to teach young people transitioning how to become trainers, so that it's not just, okay, after they leave foster care, then that's it, and there's no way to engage them. So I would say the organic mentorship happens through, those are just a couple of ways that I think organically mentorship happens.
I love that in terms of, again, just utilizing alumni in as many different sort of scenarios and instances as possible, so that almost like those young people can see themselves reflected back in a successful manner. Like, I love that. Whitney, we heard, again, this is like another kind of question based on Casey's list of policy recommendations, which again were awesome. But she also mentioned school-based mentoring, just how powerful that is, just in terms of, again, school being a safe haven for many of our young people in foster care, that being the one sort of stable environment that a lot of them, that a lot of our young people sort of have in their lives. So wanted you to sort of speak to the power of school-based mentoring relationships.
Absolutely. So, like Casey said, the youth in care often feel more comfortable in a school environment than their home environment, and so it is a way and a place that they're naturally intersecting with caring adults and caring adult relationships. A couple of things on this. First of all, it's really important that school staff be trained on a trauma-informed perspective, and so and that ranges from the top level administration all the way down to the individual serving lunch and the security guards and the paraprofessionals. So there's work to be done in making sure that school staff are educated in trauma-informed practices. But again, back to school, the school setting and school-based mentoring is often more structured than community-based mentoring, and I would say more that structure is more driven towards educational attainment, which can sometimes be a challenge for youth in care who are, again, bouncing from placement to placement and not always worried about getting their homework done naturally. And so schools can really facilitate a caring environment for youth to focus on educational attainment, for youth to connect with caring adults who are trauma informed and to go on and graduate high school and be successful long term.
That's awesome. That's awesome. And Casey will have our final word. So Casey, young people in foster care have been leading the conversation on policy and systemic changes. Can you tell me a little bit more about some of the work that the National Foster Care Youth and Alumni Policy Council is working on?
Sure. I'm also going to talk about Foster Club because
sure,
the National Foster Youth and Alumni Policy Council is in partnership with Foster Club,
sure.
Foster Care Alumni of America, and as well as Casey Family Programs. And so what Foster Club does, again, we are the national network for young people in foster care. And so one of the things that Foster Club strives to do is that we ensure that people with lived experience are at the table. Making sure that their voices are elevated and they have their seats. One of the things that Foster Club is not is a youth-led organization. We are a youth and adult partnership organization, meaning that youth and adults work together. One is not leading the other. We really strive to work with the young people, and the young people really strive to work with us. And that is what the National Foster Youth and Alumni Policy Council is. We have a board or a council of 15 young people ranging between the ages of 18 and 24 from all other regions that ACF has in the United States. So we have people from California, we have people like me from New Jersey, and we have people from everywhere, and some of them are sitting in this room. And so we get together, we convene. We used to convene twice a year, now we only convene once. And depending on the time of year, we get together and come up with policy recommendations. And what we strive to do is that we would like to educate, advocate, and for different policies that can really help benefit young people from foster care or in foster care. And so we have a few sets of policy recommendations that you can find on our website. You can find it on the National Foster Youth and Alumni.org, I believe it is, website, or you can just go to fosterclub.com and it'll lead you to that. And we also meet with federal stakeholders and community partners like Mentor. We met with them last fall to talk about our social capital recommendations and what that can really do for young people in foster care. And so also Foster Club is integral with informing and advocating for federal legislation, including the Family First Act. We were very involved with that, making sure young people had their voice. And also with fostering connections to success and Increasing Adoptions Act of 2008, Preventing Sex Trafficking and Strengthening Families Act of 2014, and then Family First. And so those are some of the things that we do.
Amazing, amazing. Give this panel a round of applause. We'll give you better than that. So again, obviously you all can sort of tell from the nature of this conversation, this is only the tip of the iceberg in terms of, again, millions of different experiences from youth in care, from foster care alumni, etc. So we really, really appreciate, again, just hearing some of those experiences, some of the recommendations, etc., and just some of the personal stories, again, just about how deeply personal this work can be. So before we go into Q&A, we wanted to invite up a couple of our friends from Goldman Sachs to share their experiences as working with mentors in the Fostering College Success Mentorship Program at Goldman Sachs. So we have coming up Alexis Vasilakis and Frank Vesey, who will provide remarks on their experiences. We'll welcome them.
So, look, before we start, first I want to say thank you very much for everything you've done as a panel. Look, I get emotional about this. You represent the society I want to live in, so thank you. We will support you as individuals and as an organisation. The second thing is, look, we're very humbled to be here, and this is actually very personal for both myself and Frank. We're both adopted. So I was actually born into care. I was adopted at the age of 3 months. I was then a refugee. And so we started with, well, You did. We're just so close. We started with nothing, and we've been incredibly lucky in life. There's been people like the panelists doing work like this decades back. And they helped us when, I was a refugee in the 1970s. And people helped me, they helped clothe me, they helped feed me, they helped me with an education and, you know, perseverance, luck, whatever you will say. I got to where I am now, which is frankly, you can pinch me and I still think I'm dreaming. I'm talking to Congress. Okay, it's mind-blowing for me to be up here. So once again, thank you. So I do want to talk a bit about Goldman. So how did we get here as representatives of Goldman Sachs? Well, our leadership has a really strong commitment to making a difference, both at the individual level, but also at the community level. And they always look for ample, diverse opportunities for us to participate anywhere where we can help. And so you have the traditional, you know, let's go and clean a park, or let's go and help some animals, or beyond. But there's humanity as well. And so 2 years ago, we did an outreach in New York City where we went and held a career fair for underprivileged youth. And, you know, Goldman people tend to be a bit chatty. And, you know, we sort of started evolving connections and networking. And, you know, it opened certain doors. And 2 years later, we had a great partnership with the Casey Foundation and ACS. And so for the better part of this year, we've been mentoring as an organization a number of young adults that are transitioning from school into a professional world. And it, you know, this resonates so much with us because from an organization, mentorship is really part of our DNA, it's part of our culture. And this is really a natural extension, a natural progression for what we do internally to sort of leverage those skills to do them externally. And so, as I said, both of us, this is the least we can do based on where we've come from. And so, you know, I sort of wanted to boil everything down because, again, I can go on forever. What I sort of wanted to put there is literally 5 words out there that we as an organization have frankly gained from, as individuals we've gained from, and what I think our partners have gained from. And it's sort of wrapped up in a bow called, how can we better serve our mentees and our partners? So the first thing is resources. The fact that Goldman has an office in over 45 cities worldwide. With our partners, if you need a meeting space with a roof, with light, with refreshment, with security, we can provide that. We can provide time. We've got 40,000 people who work for us. If you need things and you work with us, we will make the time to make things happen. Again, it goes back to our social contract of making a difference. We've got expertise. If some of our mentors have a problem, or some of our partner organizations need some advice, well, we've got legal specialists, we've got technical specialists, we've got operations specialists. We're a large company that can devote time, materials, and money to help strengthen the partnership. We can provide experience for some of the younger mentees. You know, when they're going from, I'm coming in from college into a working environment, well, we can help with writing resumes for them. We can help them with their time management skills. There's a lot we can do to help give them comfort and experience before they hit, for a better word, the cold light of day. And what I think the most important thing is stability. Goldman is an organization. We just happen to pass through its doors and its walls. And so if the organization is behind this, it doesn't matter when you come to us, be it a day from now, a year from now, a decade from now. This is an important program to us. There will always be people within Goldman that can support what we want to do. So, as I said, I talk a bit. I'm going to sort of pass over to Frank.
Yeah, we'll also talk to you.
Yeah, it's a trait. So if you talk a lot, come to us at Goldman. No. Frank, please.
Thank you very much.
Sure.
Hi, thank you, everybody. I really appreciate this. And because I was adopted out of foster care, I'm an alum.
Yes.
Awesome. That's so cool. So what I want to do today is, again, thank everybody. I really appreciate this. This is a true honor for us. I just want to talk a little bit about the story I have with my mentee, because I think it's funny. There's so much we can talk about. We do like to chat a lot, but I only have a few minutes, so I'll try to keep this brief. So mentoring is not unfamiliar to what we do. We mentor at Goldman. We're encouraged to mentor, you know, new folks who join the firm. We have mentors ourselves. So mentoring to us is easy, but it's easy for colleagues. It's easy for people who we work with. And I always wanted to give back somewhere in life. And as Sadiq said, it's great to talk about it. It's another thing to actually do. So when I found out my firm had partnered with ACS in New York as well as KC Foster Program, I said, oh, I'm in. And then I said, what did I get into? Because, you know, what does this mean? Like, what does it mean to be a mentor for someone who's in foster care, who's about to age out? What does it mean? I have no idea. Fortunately, Casey meets with us once a month, the cohort that we have, to help us, right? We get coached because we run into questions that we just assume, you know, we do have a privileged background. We just assume that things are the way they are and we don't realize that they're not. So the story I want to talk about is my relationship with my mentee. His name is Marcus. I won't go into his last name, but he's a wonderful, wonderful kid. And I say kid, it's youth, I know, but you're all kids to me. When, at the beginning of the year, our firm hosted a dinner and it was to introduce the mentors and the mentees. And I was so excited to meet Marcus because we had spoken on the phone briefly just to kind of get to know each other. And when I met him, I'm like, wow, this is great, but I don't want to be overbearing. So I'm like, what do I do? What do I do? And I wasn't sure, but you know, I have two daughters, they're 20 and 23, so I'm like, okay, I'm familiar with kids, so that's okay. My wife's a teacher in an inner city school, so I asked her, I said, what do I do? She said, just be yourself. Don't push yourself on them, whatever you do. She goes, you have to build a relationship. It will take time. It's not going to happen today, which we work in a society, we work in a, you know, where everything happens now. So I said, okay, let me start slow. And we met, we had a nice dinner with a bunch of the folks, and his friends were just wonderful people. And I said, okay, great. So the next day, it was like a Thursday night. So the next day, Friday, I sent him a text. So I'm like, hey, Marcus, you know, so happy to have met you in person. I didn't hear anything back. So then Saturday came. So I'm like, hey Marcus, you know, is this your phone? And didn't hear anything back. So my wife said, like, would you stop it? Leave him alone. Like, you know. So on Sunday, I'm like, all right, I won't say anything. And then Monday came, Tuesday came, I'm like, you know, kind of getting. So then we met as a group again with Casey and ACS, and we all had the same problem. We said, you know, we're texting our mentees, but we're not hearing back. Then we found out, well, it could be because, well, they're in school. Maybe they don't have cell service. They only use it when they're on Wi-Fi, which, oh wow, I didn't think about that, right? Maybe by now they already forgot about that weekend, but you know, it'll happen over time. We work, again, I get if Alexis texts me, I'm going to respond within a minute.
By the way, we did download every possible social media app. It's frightening.
Yeah. Yeah, you know what I mean? Yeah, tweet
Instagram,
it's just unbelievable. So, you know, so I didn't know what to do, and you know, so I'm like, okay, what do I do? And then I said, you know what? Let me just kind of be myself, and you know, genuinely just ask, as I would my own kids. You know, I said, hey Marcus, I just want to make sure you're okay. That's all. You know, just making sure you're okay. And then he got back, and I get a little emotional about this. But he got back the next day, and he was like, hey Frank, you know, so I'm fine, thank you for checking in. Since then, I get a text probably every day that says, hey Frank. But in the beginning, I was like, you know, oh, hey Marcus, what do you need? Do you need to chat? He's like, no, just checking in. Then I got a text on the weekend, and he's like, you know, hey Frank, and I'm like, you know, hey Marcus, and I send emojis. Now, you know, so I look like an emoji, right? So, you know, I'll send something back with glasses and stuff like that. Just, you know, and he laughs, you know, LOL, and then, you know, he's like, you know, are you free to talk? And I'm like, ooh, this is Saturday. And then he called me, and we spoke for an hour, and he had questions because he was 20 at the time, and he was aging out. He didn't know if he was going to get kicked out of the home. He had so many questions, and I had no answers. But what I do have is a network. I have a network of a lot of people at a firm and just through life. So what I did is, it was a Saturday, I knew a colleague of mine who she was in foster care her whole life. She was 30 years old, and I said, I can call her. Why not? So I called her on the weekend, and I said, look, I have my mentee. She knew the program we were in. I said, can you speak to him? I have no idea the questions yet. I was Googling, and I couldn't find anything. So I asked him, I said, can I connect you? She goes, like, sure. So I connected them. Now they're good friends. And whatever she told him, she helped him. And I said, you got to tell me. And, you know, and she did. She told me about the different questions and stuff he had. And then, of course, at our monthly meeting with Casey, I brought that up as well. I'm like, you know, he's nervous. He's going to get, you know, kicked out. And because of the program they're in, that wasn't the case. But so I had to reassure him of that. So that's pretty much the story. You know, when he turned 21, My wife and I asked him, do you want to go out to dinner? I said, I'm happy to take you out to dinner, him and his boyfriend. And I said, absolutely. I said, we'd love to take you out. You pick the restaurant. And this is a guy who said he loved just, Shake Shack. So I expected, Shake Shack. He picked a really high-end restaurant, which was awesome. We didn't care, right? So we went there. We had such a lovely dinner, and we all connected, and it was a lot of fun. But prior to that, we didn't know. I'm like, what is our mentees going to expect from us? I mean, money? Are they going to expect? Like, what are they going to expect, right? And we heard from also one of the youths who she's on the phone as well. It's a video conference. So other than Casey and ACS, there's a young adult on there who also answers our questions. And they said, no, you don't have to, no gifts, just a simple happy birthday on the birthday, maybe a cupcake, just something. That the acknowledgement of that was really all that mattered. And I'm like, wow, it's foreign to us that that's all it takes. Because again, you grow up in a privileged lifestyle and you just take so much for granted that that's just not the case. And he relies on a lot of his friends, and who I met. We actually did a bowling event, our company sponsored as well. The company is very supportive of what we do. And they took us to Chelsea Piers in New York. If you haven't been there, it's wonderful. And we bowled, and they gave us food and everything. We met all their friends, and what a close-knit group of young adults. It was just awesome to see. But what we're giving back to them is the ability to understand that you could leverage a bigger network, right? You can leverage, and we don't want to be that revolving door. So, what I found out, again, as sort of an outsider, we think, the foster kids have plenty of services. They really don't need, folks like us to get involved, right? They have plenty of money, plenty of services. What do we know? But then you meet, and you're like, wait a second. Every adult in there, it's like I visualize a revolving door. There's no stability. At least that's what I, that's my understanding, my perception of this. And they trust their friends. So for me, personally, I just want to be that adult in his life that can offer him stability. And be there for his, right now I'm coaching him through college. He sends me a text, here are my grades, and I try to be encouraging. I'm like, awesome. He's like, no, they're horrible. And I said, okay, to be fair, they're not horrible, but you passed. The goal is graduating. And I feel like I'm making a difference in helping him. And that to me is really what's important. And I want to be there, not just graduation. I want to be there for marriage, for family, for jobs, for failures, because it's not all rosy out there, right? I want to be there for everything possible because I had that. And that's what I want to give back. So, yes, I could speak forever, but I will stop. And I will turn it back to my colleague.
Yeah, I mean, look, we've taken way too much, so thank you very much. Look, for all of you, I know you're being briefed on stuff. If you can do just one thing, try being a mentor. Right? Even 5 minutes of your time, once a month, will make a difference. It really will. So once again, thank you so much for having us here. We'll be around afterwards if people have any questions. But thank you very much for the opportunity.
Thank you.
That was awesome. That was awesome. I think Frank, he's learned a lot from his mentor. Well, they know that. But they've agreed to stick around for a couple of moments afterwards for some questions. But we did have time for just a couple of questions here. So please.
Sure. My name is Jordan Sosa. I'm an intern with CCAI as well, and interning with the U.S. House Committee of Ways and Means on the majority side. Just want to thank y'all so much. It's really an honor to hear my brothers and sisters in the foster care community and allies to provide mentorships and make sure that all my brothers and sisters in the foster care community have an opportunity to become productive members of society. My policy research is focused on youth-centered mentorships and support services. And while doing my research, last year, Congresswoman Karen Bass introduced legislation H.R. 2952, which is the Foster Youth Mentoring Act. And this legislation was to authorize funding and ensuring mentoring programs who receive funding that they are engaged in developing quality mentorships. It was proposed last year, June of 2017, with only 7 Democrats supporting the legislation. And while doing this, I've also been researching Family First Prevention Services Act, and like Mr. Ali has mentioned, to make sure that youth preventing youth that are at risk of entering at the foster care system receive these services. And my question for y'all is, how do we make sure, while my colleagues in the CCAI program and myself, while we're doing this policy research, to make sure to see what funding streams are available to make sure that each state and tribe that they will receive these funding and services to provide mentorships to foster youth or youth at risk of entering the foster care system.
I'll take that. So I'm a little familiar with CCAI as a former director of policy. One of my favorite jobs was leading the policy report writing process with FYI. So the Foster Youth Internship Program is a phenomenal one. I hope if your office doesn't host an FYI this year, that they will next year or the year after, again and again. It's really a unique program. So with Family First, you're going to look at the funding. The Title IV-E funding is available. States will have to opt into the prevention provisions of Family First in order to access that money. So essentially, some people are calling it an entitlement because it's 4E and it is not income dependent. There's no income test. Like right now for serving certain foster youth, right? You have to meet the old, very antiquated AFDC standard for income. With this new law, it has many monumental changes, and one of them is it's not tied to the income of the family. So, but it's going to take, implementation is going to be a heavy lift. It's going to take a long time. Just, I want to say 2 weeks ago, 53 members of Congress in the House signed a bipartisan letter. Many of your bosses may have signed on. It's an effort to, they wrote it to HHS in an effort to say, when you write guidance, which is expected in October of this year, keep older youth at the forefront. So that may be particularly important to you for mentoring services and other support services that they not only are, like I said, pregnant and parenting foster youth categorically eligible, but for the other youth who are trying to prevent from entering or re-entering the system, and their parents and kin caregivers, that they be eligible. Even if they're 17, they're on the way out in a given state, depending on what their age limit is for aging out. Another thing that you're going to be interested in is, to access the prevention services, you have to meet eligibility, you have to have evidence and research behind what you're doing. So any state that's going to be able to access those funds has to spend at least 50% of the funds to get federal reimbursement on well-supported services and programs. That's the highest category. So at least half of those services. But then you can have services that are in the supported category as well as the promising category. And we can talk further about what that is.
Thank you. Thank you.
I have two pretty short questions. One is not really a question, but I'd like to keep an alumni picture afterwards. The second one, when you have a youth in care that you're mentoring who is living with a family that's not of the same cultural background, should it fall to the mentor, if they're sharing the same cultural identity, to kind of teach them about like cultural practices or even discrimination and biases that may come up? And if so, like, how do you go about that?
Great question.
I can try to take this one.
Any takers?
I think it can fall to the mentor to play that role. I don't know that it has to. I mean, I don't think it should be, but if that's the only person in that young person's life who has that awareness that there's a deficiency there, then I certainly would advise them to speak up, and hopefully the foster family would be open to those conversations. I think that mentoring programs can play a role in facilitating that with sort of understanding, of course, the young person's situation in their regular communications with the youth's caregiver and the mentor as well, and sort of helping to build the bridge and sort of plant the seeds to have those conversations. I think that, we certainly, there's more work to be done from my perspective, and this isn't my role, but within the care system itself in educating foster care families to be more culturally aware, culturally competent, aware of biases. I just think there's more work to be done there, but I think it is an opportunity for mentors to play a role in bridging that gap if possible.
Hello, my name is Courtney Jones, and I'm a CCAI intern as well. I'm working with Senator Hatch on the Finance Committee. My question, well, basically, I want to first start and say I believe in social capital and mentoring. But one of my questions would be, a lot of child welfare agencies have an old way of thinking that mentorship and extracurricular activities is a privilege. And so how would you help shift their lens and way of thinking that mentorship is not a privilege? Because most of the time when kids that have encountered trauma will act out and maybe break rules, and agencies will say because you broke a rule, you will not get to meet with your mentor. So how do you change that way of thinking and move towards the stability that y'all are talking about?
Great question.
We as an organization, as part of our mentoring service philosophy, is whether or not you're in residential care or another setting, if we offer mentoring, it is not seen as a privilege. Now sure, there are situations where it can be, that relationship can dissolve and it, maybe not the most appropriate thing. Both parties really have to be committed to it, but it is not treated as a privilege. I think that realization came early to us because we were in the residential care business, and we saw you have children who are away from their families in a non-family setting, and if they can benefit from continuity of a relationship that is with a supportive adult, sometimes the first that they've experienced, that can change the whole game for them. And so it was not ever approached, as a privilege. I don't know if that's true for other agencies or residential programs.
Well, I would offer too that it's important to teach the young person how to advocate for themselves, because it may be a case manager telling them that they can't do that, but understanding that you can elevate the situation. There are a number of states that have ombudsmen, foster youth ombudsmen. I'm one for the state of Maryland. So those types of concerns that will come to me, I would elevate that or try to at least mediate and see what's going on. And I think that's a really important part too, because a lot of the young people do not know how to advocate for themselves in a way that they're heard. So yeah, I would say that.
Give this panel a round of applause one more time, please. I think this, number one, is 12:45, so we really appreciate everybody for sticking around. We've kept you all long enough. Our panelists will stick around for a couple of moments, but again,